So I made a video a while back talking about why OnePlus switching to ColorOS sucks. And I still stand by it. Well, sort of. Now look, everybody doesn't like the idea of OnePlus switching to ColorOS. And I also have a fair bit of share in it. But as much as I like ColorOS, I love OxygenOS. And I have my own reasons why. Now, OnePlus recently announced their so-called unified platform. Now, yes, before you say it, it isn't anything big. It's just a reskinned version of Oppo's ColorOS with some minor tweaks here and there. And when they announced that, they said 4 things that were their priority. It should be fast and smooth, it should be clean and lightweight, it should be reliable, and it should be smart and feature-rich. And we're going to be focusing on these 4 categories in today's video. So they did say that it would be fast and smooth, but if you own any OnePlus phone except for the N series and the Nord series phones, you won't really feel a difference in like what they say as fast and smooth, because ColorOS has always been optimized for a wide range of devices, whether they run a lower end chipset or a higher end chipset. So this is kind of a confusing selling point for ColorOS, but I think what they mean is that it'll be a little bit of like how OxygenOS was, a little bit smooth. And yes, this was a previous tagline of OnePlus, so you really shouldn't be seeing any difference with it being fast and smooth. Reliability. Now, this is a place that we're talking about OnePlus having a big fat problem. Especially when they delivered OxygenOS 10 and 11 updates, it went through a lot of obstacles. And when they're saying that they're switching to ColorOS, that is actually a big relief considering the fact that ColorOS is more refined, but ColorOS has its own problems. So when OnePlus announced the fact that they were integrating ColorOS's codebase into OxygenOS, it was a big relief and a big blow to the company at the same time, considering that ColorOS's codebase could technically make OxygenOS more stable, but at the same time, we all knew that OxygenOS was going to be polluted with ColorOS's UI elements as well, eventually coming down right now. So there was also the other fact of that the OnePlus 7 series was sprinkled with a lot of sluggish usability, especially on the OnePlus 7T's camera and the OnePlus 7 Pro's performance. It's not related to OnePlus actually switching to ColorOS, but I had the need to actually say that out to make it clear. So reliability is actually improving on OxygenOS if you look at it from this point. But here's where things get a bit weird. Being smart and feature-rich. Now, this characteristic is inherited from ColorOS, and it is gonna be typically new for OxygenOS users, considering the fact that every other UI or every other OS or overlay for every other phone, like One UI, Magic UI, MIUI, and even ColorOS, has tried to distinguish itself from bone stock Android by offering a range of customization and various overlay options. But OxygenOS's whole selling point is the fact that it's just small, minor, useful tweaks over stock Android. And bringing in these new smart features will actually be a good selling point. Like for example, OxygenOS's photo editor inbuilt isn't really a great option, but ColorOS on the other hand has a lot of fun stuff with it. Most of them are gimmicks, but the thing is that it really enhances the user experience and makes it quite fun. That is in itself a selling point, but at the same time, like if this actually brings in useless stuff from ColorOS, like the bad things, adverts and too much of bloatware, that will be a big fat concern, considering the fact that OnePlus generally just runs ColorOS on its Chinese variant smartphones. So when you take all of these factors into account, it's gonna be a mixed card when we see the final version of this new software. But I'm not gonna get my hopes high, because this really doesn't seem a OnePlus move. It's more of like an Oppo move. Clean and lightweight. Now, this is a place where we're talking about OnePlus having a big fat chunk of the pie, considering the fact that they've been delivering OxygenOS as a really near stock Android option. But if you remember, before OnePlus actually came into the smartphone game, we had competitors like Samsung and HTC, with Samsung guilty of actually having a ton of bloatware on their phone. And eventually people who actually liked Samsung hardware but really hated the software started firing up custom ROMs, more popularly CyanogenMod, which was a really popular custom ROM at that time. Now it's been changed into LineageOS, but the fact that OnePlus actually had a really good smartphone on their hands, which eventually is kind of expected from every other Chinese company at that time. So they needed something to differentiate themselves from the rest of the other Chinese companies. When that was the case, they thought of actually partnering up with CyanogenMod for a lot of reasons, but the main point is that Chinese smartphones have always been a really great value for money. But the problem is that every time these smartphones were really good on paper, when you fire them up, well, it's kind of a letdown for a lot of West side consumers, considering the fact that the things that the Chinese market actually really agrees on or respects, the West market doesn't really like it that much. Like, for example, the beauty filters and the over-the-top overlays and customization options. You kind of need tailor-made and neat options for the West. So when that was the case, the fact that OnePlus distinguished themselves by actually partnering up with a custom ROM company, well, that was a big fat win on their book, considering the fact that they had good specs, they had a good price, good launching strategy. Well, not so good at the time. The invite system was really bad. So when all of this actually came into the picture, it was pretty good. But now that this whole thing has actually promised something clean and lightweight, excuse me? Like, the fact that many people still are begging OnePlus to go back to the stock ways, considering the fact that OxygenOS 11 was the most controversial update ever, which indicated that OnePlus was actually moving away from their stock feeling software. People were let down, and when they saw this, they clearly know that OnePlus wouldn't go back to stock. But you gotta pay attention to the details. They said clean and lightweight, not stock feeling. So what they mean by that is that here are two versions of ColorOS. This is running Realme UI, this is running OxygenOS. Both are based on the same ColorOS. But which one would you personally choose? The one that says OxygenOS, right? Even though both of these are based on the exact same software, with a little bit of UI elements flickering on and above, I'd say it actually looks good on OnePlus, to be honest. And personally, I actually like the customization options with the full red by default, and generally just bringing in confidence that if this actually stays like this without any kind of Oppo based adverts or anything that is actually Oppo-fying OnePlus already, then this would actually be a good thing, considering the fact that OnePlus users, even though without actually looking too shabby, this will actually be great. This kind of a merge is one of the places where we would say we expected really worse, but it was not that bad. But that's just me. I'm just saying that because I actually expected even worse stuff happening. So that's kind of a conclusion, where OnePlus is now a subsidiary of Oppo directly, and we can never see the OnePlus that we saw before, but at least we'll try to embrace it, probably.